I still remember that morning. The sound of tires crunching over the gravel, the smell of pine in the air, and the strange feeling that something wasn't right. My cabin looked different. Boxes on the porch, curtains I never bought, and a man standing inside, holding my coffee mug. Before I could even breathe, the HOA president showed up, with the police right behind her. They said I didn't belong here anymore. They said he did. And that's when I realized this wasn't a mistake. This was a setup. Welcome back to HOA Core, where every fence line hides a secret, and every neighborhood rule comes with a price. If you've ever hated HOAs, if you've ever dreamed of standing up to them, then hit subscribe and join the rebellion. And hey, share this video with that one friend, the one who's still fighting their HOA today. Now, let's begin. I stood there, frozen, watching that guy sip from my coffee mug like he owned the damn place. You ever get that gut feeling? Like the world just glitched for a second, and everything you knew stopped making sense? Yeah, that's what hit me right then. I blinked, look again. The porch still had my chairs, my cooler, even that rusty lantern I forgot to throw out last fall. But the sound of his voice, when he said, "Morning, neighbor." Man, that was the part that made my blood boil. I wasn't his neighbor. I was the freaking owner. The HOA president, Mrs. Landis, strutted over like she was walking a red carpet. Tight bun, clipboard in hand, smile that could slice through glass. And those cops behind her, just standing there, like props in her little power show. She said, "Sir, you're trespassing on private property." I laughed, like an idiot laugh, because that cabin was mine. Bought with my savings, built with my own hands, paid every damn fee those HOA vultures ever threw my way. I told her, "This is my cabin, my land, my name's on the deed." She tilted her head like a confused cat and said, "Not anymore, it isn't." I looked past her, and that guy inside, the so-called new tenant, just stood there, smirking, like this was all a sitcom and I was the punchline. There were boxes stacked by the wall, labeled with my name scratched out, and his written over it. The audacity, man. I walked closer. Mrs. Landis blocked me with her little clipboard like it was a shield. "Sir, step back, police are present." And the cop on the left, some rookie with a buzz cut, said, "Let's all stay calm, all right? This can be handled civilly." Civilly. They were literally calling me a trespasser at my own cabin. You ever notice how HOAs act like they own you? They don't even need power. They just make you believe they have it. That's how Mrs. Landis played her game. Paperwork, warnings, letters stuffed with legal gibberish. She once fined my neighbor for painting his mailbox too glossy. Swear to God. And now, here she was, trying to convince me that I didn't own what I bought. The man stepped out onto the deck finally. Looked maybe mid-30s. Too clean. Like the type who ironed his jeans and called it casual. He said, "I'm renting this property through the HOA. They said the previous owner abandoned it." Abandoned it. I laughed again, but this time it wasn't funny. I said, "Buddy, I was gone for 2 weeks. 2. I've got food in the fridge that hasn't even expired yet." He shrugged, and that shrug said everything. It said he didn't care. It said he knew something I didn't. Mrs. Landis flipped through her papers like a magician setting up a trick. Then she pulled out a form and said, "See, failure to comply with community maintenance policies, unpaid fines, violation of HOA standards." She said I'd ignored multiple warnings, that my neglect triggered a repossession clause. Repossession. That clause was buried in fine print. Something about property upkeep and community harmony. I swear, they make these rules sound poetic while they rob you blind. The cops were just watching, doing that thing where they act like neutral referees, but you can tell they've already picked a side. One of them said, "Say, maybe you should take this to court." Court. Like I had time to fight over my own cabin. That's when I realized, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was personal. Mrs. Landis had been waiting for this. She'd always hated me, called me difficult, said I resisted the spirit of community cooperation. Translation, I didn't bow down to her petty little rules. Last summer, I put up a hammock. She said it violated aesthetic uniformity. I laughed and told her it violated her ego. She fined me $500. $500 for a hammock. So yeah, she'd been waiting for payback. And now, She had her excuse. I took a deep breath, looked around at the cops, the stranger, the mountain lake behind them. It all felt like a bad dream, like I'd left reality somewhere on the road up here. Then I noticed something weird. The sign on the gate, the one I'd hung myself. It didn't say my name anymore. It said leased property, HOA authorized occupant. How the hell did they do that in 2 weeks? I walked back to my truck, opened the glove box, pulled out my deed papers, showed them the signature, the notary stamp, the whole deal. Mrs. Landers didn't even look. She just smiled and said, "You can show those in court, Mr. Matthews. But until then, please leave the premises." That smug tone, that fake calmness, it made my blood boil. I told her, "You're making a big mistake. I'm not leaving." The cop sighed, hand on his belt, ready to play hero. The other one whispered something into his radio. For a second, I thought they'd actually arrest me. At my own freaking house. That's when the stranger leaned against the door frame and said, "Hey man, maybe you should just let it go. It's not worth it." Not worth it. Buddy, this was everything I'd worked for. I wanted to punch that smack off his face. But I didn't. Because that's exactly what they wanted. Instead, I took out my phone and started recording. Mrs. Landers panicked. Tried to block the camera. That's when I said, loud and clear, "I am the legal owner of this property, and this woman is trespassing with the police's help." She froze for a second. You could tell she wasn't expecting that. The cops looked at each other. Now they were the ones uncomfortable. I zoomed in on the sign, on the fake paperwork she held, on the man behind her still pretending like he lived there. Then I said the line that made her twitch. "This is how you lose your HOA crown, Mrs. Landers." She clenched her jaw, and for a split second, I saw fear. That told me everything. She knew she was bluffing. She knew I caught on. But then she smiled again. That same fake smile that started all this. "Have a nice day, Mr. Matthews," she said, and walked back toward her car like nothing had happened. The cops followed. The stranger shut my door, and I was left standing there, on my own porch, locked out of my own cabin. I sat on the steps, staring at the lake, thinking about how far these HOA people will go just to feel powerful. All that talk about community, all that fake unity, it's just control wrapped in pretty words. And I couldn't help but wonder, if they could take my house while I was still alive, what else could they take next time? When they finally left, the silence felt heavy, like the air itself was judging me. I sat there on the steps of my own cabin, phone in hand, heart beating so hard I could hear it echo against the lake. I replayed everything that had just happened. Mrs. Landers, the cops, that smug stranger with his fake calm. I wanted to scream, but instead I laughed. Because honestly, it felt like a joke gone too far. 2 weeks away. That's all I was gone. I'd gone back to the city to work a few shifts, catch up on bills. And somehow in that short time, the HOA turned my home into someone else's. I'd heard stories before about HOAs doing wild stuff, fining people for flower colors, banning Christmas lights, forcing someone to repaint their fence because it was too happy. But this was next level insanity. I scrolled through my emails, hundreds of them from HOA management portal, most unopened, because who actually reads those daily rule updates, right? Each one said something dumb like, "Reminder, maintain exterior harmony." Oh, notice of violation, patio decor inconsistency. But buried in there, I found one that made my stomach drop. It said, "Final warning, property compliance termination." Termination, like they were ending a job contract, not stealing a man's house. I opened it, and right there, it said I'd failed to respond to prior communications, and the property had been temporarily reassigned for maintenance lease testing. Maintenance lease testing. What kind of made-up corporate nonsense was that? I remembered that last board meeting, the one I didn't attend because Mrs. Landers scheduled it on a weekday afternoon. Half the neighborhood can't even show up at that time, which is exactly how she likes it. She always says, "Those who show up make the rules." And guess what? She shows up every time. I called my friend Dale. He lives 3 houses down and's been fighting her since 2019. He picked up on the second ring and said, "Dude, I saw the cops up there. What the hell happened?" I told him everything. The stranger, the fake paperwork, the whole circus. He laughed, not because it was funny, but because he'd seen it coming. "Bro, she's been planning something," he said. "Last month she pushed a new policy about unmaintained vacation properties. Said they lower community value." I asked him, "And who defines unmaintained?" He said, "Guess who, huh?" I knew then. This wasn't about some stupid rule. This was about control. Mrs. Landers had always hated that I didn't bend, that I didn't attend her barbecues, didn't join her Beautify the Neighborhood WhatsApp group, didn't clap at her fake speeches during HOA meetings. She needed everyone to admire her, to act like she was queen of suburbia. But I never played along. And now she'd taken that personally. That night, I didn't leave. I parked my truck right outside the gate, rolled down the window, and just stayed at the cabin lights flickering inside. I could see shadows moving. The new tenant walking around in his socks, like he'd owned the place for years. My dog used to bark at that same window. Now there was another man standing there. It hurt more than I expected, like someone had erased a part of my life and replaced it with theirs. Next morning, I drove down to the HOA office. It's in this fake fancy building behind the community park. White pillars, gold letters, Lakeside Property Association. Sounds classy till you realize it's just a few power-hungry neighbors playing government. The receptionist barely looked up, said, "Do you have an appointment?" I said, "No, but you're gonna want to make 1 inch." She blinked, then said, "Mrs. Landers isn't available today." Of course she wasn't. I demanded my file. She said she couldn't give it without authorization. I laughed again, because apparently you need permission to access your own property records now. Then I noticed something. On her desk, a stack of envelopes, each one marked HOA violation notice, and on top of the pile, my name. I reached for it. She covered it with her hand. That's when I took out my phone and started recording again. Her face turned pale. She mumbled something about privacy policy, but I already had what I needed, proof that this whole thing was rigged. I drove straight to the county clerk's office, asked for property ownership verification. The clerk typed for a few minutes, frowned, then said, "Sir, it shows a temporary lease registration under HOA Transfer Code 43B. I asked her what that meant. She shrugged. "Never seen that code before. Might be internal HOA stuff." Internal stuff. Exactly what these people hide behind every time. Back at the cabin later that evening, the air felt heavier, like the lake itself knew something dirty was going on. I parked a little further down the road this time. Didn't want the cops showing up again. Just sat there and watched. Through the window I could see that man sitting on my couch, feet up, TV on, eating chips from my bowl. And you know what? He looked way too comfortable for someone renting temporarily. That's when I noticed something strange. A black SUV parked behind the cabin. Not mine, not his. HOA plate sticker on the windshield. I crept closer through the trees. And there she was, Mrs. Landers, talking on her phone, pacing, her voice sharp like broken glass. She said something like, "Make sure the listing stays active. He'll break soon." Break soon? Who was she talking about? Me. I stepped on a twig. She froze, looked around. I ducked behind a tree, waited till she got back in the SUV and drove off. I walked up to the porch quietly. The stranger inside didn't hear me. I peeked through the window and saw something that nearly made me drop my phone. A binder on the table, HOA seal on the cover, and inside, a bunch of property transfer forms, with different names crossed out, and Hayes signed at the bottom. She'd been doing this for months, taking properties, leasing them to people she knew, claiming community upkeep. And the best part, those people were paying her directly. I took pictures, every page, every signature, then slipped away before the guy noticed. By the time I got back to my truck, my hands were shaking, but not from fear, from excitement, because now I had proof. Driving back to the motel that night, I thought about how many other homeowners she'd screwed over, how many families just gave up, thinking they couldn't fight the system. But I wasn't like them. I wasn't letting this go. They wanted a quiet victim. They got the wrong guy. Still, one question burned in my mind. If she was confident enough to pull this scam on me, How many others were already gone? Was I the only one who caught on? Or the next in a long list of people who lost everything to an HOA queen with a pen and a smile? I didn't sleep that night. Kept replaying everything in my head. Her voice, her fake calm, those forged papers spread across my table in the stranger's hands. By sunrise, I was done being polite. I wanted answers, and this time, I wasn't knocking. When I pulled up to the cabin again, there he was, standing on my porch, watering my plants like he lived there forever. I got out of the truck and yelled, "Hey, buddy, we need to talk." He froze for a second, then smiked, that same smirk from yesterday. "Morning again," he said, casual as hell. "You back already?" "Back," I said, stepping closer. "Yeah, back to my own house. The one you're trespassing in." He chuckled. "Man, you really don't get it, do you?" That tone hit different. The kind of arrogance that makes your hands itch. He said, "I got the lease right here, signed by the HOA president herself. You're the one who needs to leave." I clenched my jaw. "Let me see it." He shrugged. "Not my problem, dude. Take it up with her." That's when I noticed something behind him. My family photo still hanging on the wall. Right there, next to his damn toothbrush on the counter. That picture was my life. My parents, my little sister, my dog. Everything I had left. And now it was part of his decor. Something inside me snapped. I stormed up the steps. He moved in front of the door, blocking me. "Hey man, chill," he said. "I'm not looking for trouble." I said, "You already found it." Before it got ugly, another car pulled up. Black sedan. HOA sticker on the bumper. And guess who stepped out? Mrs. freaking Landers. Clipboard in one hand, sunglasses in the other. "Mr. Matthews," she said, smiling like we were old friends. "I hope you're here to cooperate this time." "Cooperate?" I laughed. "Lady, you forged my papers." Her smile didn't even twitch. She said, "I understand this is upsetting, but you forfeited ownership when you ignored repeated notices." I said, "Oh, you mean the fake ones you mailed to the wrong address?" She blinked, just for half a second, but I saw it. That tiny crack in her confidence. The guy behind me whispered, "What's going on?" She snapped, "Stay out of this, Mark." Mark. So now he had a name. I turned around. "So, you two know each other?" She hesitated. "He's a verified tenant through the HOA transitional program." Transitional program? Wow, they just keep inventing names for scams. "Hey," I stepped down the porch and said, "Listen, Mrs. Landers, I've got photos of your signature on multiple forged property transfers. You've been leasing cabins for cash. To people you know." Her face went cold. "You have no proof those are real." "Then let's test that theory," I said, and pulled out my phone. I opened the photos right in front of her, zoomed in on her signature, her name, her initials, and the HOA seal. She tried to snatch my phone. Bad move. I pulled back, and the guy Mark just stood there, staring, like he suddenly realized he was part of something way bigger than a cheap rental. "Where did you get those?" she said, her voice shaking now. "Oh, you know," I said. "Just took a little walk around my own house last night." Her eyes went wide. "You entered without authorization." "Authorization?" I laughed. "It's my property." That's when she turned around and yelled at Mark. "Why did you let him in?" He stammered. I didn't know he was coming back." I grinned. "Well, surprise." She took out her phone. Started calling someone. Probably her lawyer, or her minions. I said, "Go ahead, call whoever you want. But the cops from yesterday, they'll be very interested to know why your name's on those fake lease contracts." That's when her tone changed. Suddenly soft. "Fake nice. Mr. Matthews, maybe we can discuss this privately." "Yeah," I said. "We can. In court." She exhaled hard, then tried a different tactic. "You're clearly emotional. We can offer you a settlement, maybe a new property within the association." "A bribe?" I said, laughing. "You really just offered me a bribe on camera." I held up my phone. Still recording. Her eyes darted to the lens. Her jaw locked. And for the first time, she didn't have anything to say. Mark looked at her, then at me, and said, "Wait, are you saying she's not the real owner?" I turned to him. Bingo. He stepped back like the ground had just disappeared under him. I paid her 3 months up front. Guess you just funded her retirement plan, buddy. He ran a hand through his hair. Man, I thought she was legit. She had all the paperwork. I said, "Yeah, she's got a whole filing cabinet of fake paperwork." Mrs. Landis shouted, "Enough. You're trespassing. Both of you." I said, "Oh really? Then let's see what the sheriff says about that." I dialed the county office, put it on speaker, and explained the situation. The deputy on the other end said, "Wait, we've had 3 complaints this month about that HOA. You said Landis." I smiked. "Yep, the one and only." He said, "Stay where you are. We're sending someone out." Her face drained of color. She tried to play it off, but her hands were shaking. Mark backed away from her like she was radioactive. He muttered, "I'm not going down for this. I didn't know." She snapped, "You signed an agreement." He said, "With you, not the HOA." And that's when she realized her game was over. I sat on the porch rail, watching her try to talk her way out over the phone. Her voice cracked. She kept saying things like misunderstanding and clerical issue. Meanwhile, Mark was pacing in the driveway, calling his bank, probably canceling the check he'd written her. And me, I just smiled. Because karma doesn't need a hammer. It just needs patience. When the sheriff's car finally showed up, she tried to pull her "I'm the president" act again. Didn't work this time. The deputy said, "We've already been contacted about your activities. Please come with us." She started to protest, but he stopped her. "We have a warrant for questioning. You can either walk, or we'll make you." The whole neighborhood was watching by then. Neighbors peeking through windows, phones out, recording every second. For once, she wasn't in control. As they took her away, Mark looked at me and said, "So, what happens now?" I smiled. Now I get my cabin back." But as I watched that sheriff car disappear down the road, I couldn't help but wonder, if Mrs. Landis had the guts to forge my papers, was she really working alone? Or was there someone bigger behind the whole HOA pulling the strings? When the police cars rolled out, the lake went quiet again. It should have felt like victory, but something about that silence didn't sit right. You know that weird feeling, when you win a fight but it still feels unfinished. That's exactly what this was. Because even though she was gone, I could feel it. There was more to this story. Mark was still standing on the porch, hands in his pockets, head hanging low like a kid who just got caught stealing cookies. He said, "Man, I swear I didn't know." I believed him, mostly. He didn't have that schemer energy. Just a guy looking for cheap rent and stumbled into a mess. But there was something else in his voice. A hesitation, like he was holding something back. I said, "You sure you don't know her from before?" He looked away. Worked with her once. Sort of. I raised a brow. "Either you did or you didn't." He sighed. "She runs this group. It's not official HOA business, more like a private investment thing. She told us she helps people secure transitional housing through community properties. Said it was totally legal." My stomach tightened. "Investment thing?" He nodded. People would pay her a membership fee, and she'd assign them cabins or houses under HOA supervision. Said the owners had defaulted or abandoned them. So it wasn't just me. This woman had been flipping homes under the radar, using HOA rules as her cover. I asked, "How many people do you think are involved?" He said quietly, "At least a dozen I know of, maybe more. She calls them caretakers." Caretakers. That word hit hard. Like she'd rebranded theft into charity. I said, "You got her contact list?" He hesitated, then pulled out his phone, scrolled for a second, and handed it over. There it was. A group chat named Community Renewal Circle. Her number pinned to the top. I skimmed the messages. Lines and lines of people asking for placement approvals, and her replying with "lease confirmed." Transfer complete. All handled. My jaw clenched. She wasn't just running scams. She was running an operation. Mark sat on the step, looked up at me. Guess I'm going to jail too. Huh. I shook my head. Nah, you're a victim like the rest of us. But you are gonna help me fix this. He looked surprised. Me? Why would you trust me? I said, because you lived inside my house without realizing it was stolen. Now you owe me. He smirked. Fair enough. We spent the rest of that afternoon going through everything she left behind. Paperwork, receipts, email printouts. Half of it stamped with fake HOA seals. The other half signed with names that didn't exist. I even found one with my neighbor Dale's address on it. Apparently his place was under review for community resale potential. Yeah, that's HOA language for your next. The more I read, the clearer it became. This wasn't just greed. It was organized. Fake fines, fake warnings, fake repossessions, quick lease transfers to her members. She'd been flipping cabins like poker chips. And the kicker, every payment went into an account named Lakeside Harmony Fund. I Googled it. No such organization existed. I looked at Mark. You still got her contacts? He nodded. Most of them, yay. She added me to her listserv. Good, I said. We're going fishing. He frowned. Fishing? I grinned. Yeah, we're gonna reel out the rest of her crew. That night, we crafted a message, pretending to be her, telling the group the plan was still active, and the next phase of properties was ready for lease. Within minutes, replies poured in, people asking for their assignments, people bragging about how smooth the transfers were, people thanking her for helping them beat the system. It was disgusting. I saved every message, every name, every screenshot, evidence, and leverage. But one message stood out. A user named LHFadmin replied, Operation continues. Legal backing confirmed. Proceed with caution. Legal backing. I froze. Whoever that was, they weren't just another member. They were the one keeping this thing alive behind the scenes. I clicked the profile. Email domain ended with @lakesidelegalgroup.com. That wasn't random. That was a law firm. I looked up the name, and my heart sank. It was the same firm that handled our HOA's founding documents. Meaning, someone on the legal side was part of it too. This wasn't just landers. This was a partnership. Mark said, Dude, you think the whole HOA board's in on it? I stayed out the window. Lights from the lake flickering like secrets beneath the surface. Not all of them, I said. But someone's pulling strings, and she was just the front face. He swallowed hard. So what now? I smiled. We bait them out. Next morning, I filed an official complaint with the county office. Attached every screenshot, every forged lease, every recorded video. The clerk looked overwhelmed. Said she'd forward it to the fraud division. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted the truth out in the open. So I called a local reporter. Told her everything. She didn't believe me at first. Until I sent the photos. Then her voice changed. This could be huge, she said. Are you willing to go on record? I said, hell yeah. By that evening, the story was already online. HOA president accused of property scam. Homeowners demand answers. Comments flooded in. People from other neighborhoods saying the same thing had happened to them. Dozens of stories. Different towns. Same pattern. And every single one mentioned the same law firm. Mark looked at me like I'd started a revolution. Maybe I had. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Because when people with money and power get exposed, they don't surrender. They retaliate. Late that night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Message said, Stop digging. This isn't just about you. No name. No signature. Just that. I showed it to Mark. He swallowed hard. Think that's from the firm? I nodded. Yeah, and that means we're getting close. I locked the cabin doors, sat by the fire, and thought about everything that had happened. All this over a house by the lake. All this because one woman wanted control, and a bunch of lawyers wanted profit. You think you own your home, until someone with a clipboard and a rulebook decides you don't. I stared into the flames and whispered, they picked the wrong guy to mess with. Because now I wasn't just fighting for my cabin. I was fighting for everyone they scammed. But one question still burned in my mind. If Mrs. Landers was just a front, who the hell was running the real operation from behind the HOA board? What's your guess? You think it's the lawyer, or someone even higher up the chain? Tell me in the comments. I want to know who you trust less, a lawyer, or your HOA president eyes. The morning after the message, I woke up to the sound of knocking. Not gentle, not polite, the kind of knock that says open up or we're coming in. I looked through the window. 2 men in suits. Black car out front. No badges, no smiles. Mark was still half asleep on the couch. I whispered, "Stay quiet." He nodded, sat up slowly. One of the men yelled, "Mr. Matthews, we just need a minute of your time." Yeah, right. That's what scammers always say before they wreck your life. I didn't open the door. They slid a paper under it and walked away without a word. When I picked it up, it was a cease and desist letter from the same law firm we'd found in the group chat, Lakeside Legal Group. Apparently, my public defamation was damaging community integrity. Translation: they were mad I exposed them. Mark muttered, "Man, they work fast." I laughed. Yeah, vultures usually do. But deep down, I knew this was bad. If they were sending letters this quick, it meant they were scared. And scared people do stupid things. By noon, my phone was blowing up. Reporters, neighbors, random strangers from Facebook. Everyone wanted to talk. Everyone wanted the full story. Some were cheering me on. Others warned me to watch my back. Then a local news van showed up by the lake. A young reporter stepped out, MIC in hand. She said, "Mr. Matthews, you're the homeowner who uncovered the HOA fraud, right?" I nodded. "Guess that's me." She smiled. "Can you tell us what's next for you?" I looked at the cabin behind me and said, "Justice, whatever it takes." But right as we started filming, another car pulled up. This time, it was the cops. 2 squad cars. Lights off. Serious faces. I whispered, "Oh great, round 2. An officer stepped out, clipboard ready. "Sir, we received complaints that you're obstructing HOA operations and trespassing on managed property." I laughed. "Again, you guys didn't get the memo. The president's in jail." He frowned. "Actually, she's been released on bail." My smile dropped. "What?" "Her attorney filed appeal paperwork this morning. She's home." Home? Meaning, right back in the same neighborhood. I looked at Mark. He mouthed, "No way." So they bailed her out. Probably the same law firm that threatened me. Power protecting power. The officer said, "We just need you to stay clear of HOA property until the legal dispute is settled." HOA property? I asked. "This is my property." He sighed. "Not according to their updated documents." Updated. That one word hit hard. They were still editing my ownership records while the case was open. These people weren't scared. They were doubling down. When the cops left, the reporter whispered, "This is bigger than I thought." I said, "Welcome to the suburbs. We call it democracy with a fence." She grinned nervously and packed up. Probably knew this story wasn't over. That night, Mark and I drove to Dale's house. He was pacing outside when we got there. He'd already seen the news. "Bro, I just got a letter too," he said. "HOA says my fence color violates policy section 8B. That's the same section Landers used before she took your cabin." So now they were targeting him. We opened his mailbox. And sure enough, there was a warning stamped "Immediate action required." They were sending a message. "Cross them, and they'll come for you next." We sat on his porch. 3 guys, tired, pissed, and way past playing nice. Mark said, "We can't go through lawyers. They own the system." I nodded. "Then we go public. All the way." Dale cracked a grin. "You mean like a community rebellion?" I smirked. "Call it whatever you want, but I'm done following HOA rules." We spent the next few days posting everything online. Documents, videos, photos, even the recording of Landers offering me a settlement. The post went viral overnight. Thousands of comments. Hundreds of homeowners sharing their own stories. #HA Revenge started trending. People were mad. People were waking up. By day 3, The law firm issued a statement. Cold corporate talk. HOA operations remain lawful and transparent. Yeah, sure. And snakes have legs too. But something told me they were sweating. Because now, it wasn't just me shouting into the void. It was thousands of voices. Then came the email. From a restricted sender. Subject line. You made your point. Now stop. No body text. Just a single attachment. A picture of my truck. Parked outside the cabin. Taken that morning. I stared at it for a full minute. The photo was too close. Too perfect. Someone was watching. Mark saw it too. He said, "Dude, we gotta get out of here." But I wasn't going anyway. This was my home. My fight. I said, if they're watching, let them. Maybe they'll see how far I'm willing to go. The next evening, Dale called. His voice was shaking. "Bro, someone slashed my tires. Left a note on my windshield." I asked, "What did it say?" He paused, then whispered, "You should have painted the fence." I swear, I could feel my blood boil through the phone. These people weren't just bullies anymore. They were sending threats. I grabbed my keys. Mark tried to stop me. "Where are you going?" I said, "To the source." He said, "Bro, you're not thinking straight." I laughed. "Oh, I'm thinking perfectly straight. I'm just done waiting." I drove straight to the HOA office. Middle of the night. Empty parking lot. One light on inside. Through the glass, I saw a figure at a desk. Not Mrs. Landers. A man. Slick suit. Typing fast on a laptop. I stepped closer and saw the logo on the monitor. Lakeside Legal Group. So the law firm wasn't just backing the HOA. They were inside it. I took a deep breath, raised my phone, and started recording. He noticed me, looked up, and smiled, like he'd been expecting me. He mouthed something through the glass. I couldn't hear it, but I read the words on his lips clearly. "You don't own anything here." Then he closed the laptop, turned off the light, and walked away, leaving me standing in the dark, with only one thought echoing in my head. If I didn't own anything anymore, what else had they already taken behind my back? I stood there, in that dark parking lot, watching the last light flicker out inside the HOA office. The air felt heavier than ever, like the whole place was holding its breath. "You don't own anything here." Those words kept echoing in my skull, like some twisted chant. I wanted to laugh, but all I felt was rage. By the time I got back to the cabin, Mark was pacing on the porch. "Bro, where the hell were you?" I tossed him my phone. "Check the video." He watched the clip. That moment when the lawyer looked at me, smiled, said it with his lips. He just whispered, "Damn." Yay. That pretty much summed it up. I barely slept that night. Every creak in the cabin sounded like a warning. Every shadow felt like someone watching. But by morning, the fear turned into fuel. You know that switch that flips when you're done being a victim? Yeah, that one. I decided it was time for payback. First thing I did, called the reporter again. She picked up half asleep. "Mr. Matthews, please tell me this isn't another break-in." I said, "No, this time it's bigger. I've got proof the law firm's running the HOA." Her tone changed instantly. "Proof?" I sent the video. Within minutes she called back. "Oh my God, do you realize what this means?" "Yeah," I said. "It means we go national." That night the story dropped. Front page of 3 local sites. Then it spread. Facebook, Reddit, even TikTok clips of my recordings. People were furious. Homeowners everywhere, sharing their own HOA nightmares. Comment sections on fire. Suddenly I wasn't just the guy with the cabin. I was the guy who stood up. But the HOA didn't stay quiet. They sent another letter. This one hand-delivered, stamped with an urgent red seal. It said, "All homeowners participating in an authorized media engagement will face permanent community suspension." Permanent suspension. Like we're in some dystopian video game. Mark laughed. "Man, they really think they're the government." I said, "No, they think they're untouchable. Let's change that." We organized a meeting. Not HOA approved. Not in their hall. We used Dale's backyard instead. Word spread fast. By evening, 15 homeowners showed up. all angry, all tired, all done being bullied. I told them everything. The fake leases, the forged papers, the lawyer inside the board. They listened, silent. Then one woman stood up and said, "So, what do we do now?" I grinned. We fight dirty. Their way. Step 1. Compliance overload. We followed every single HOA rule, exactly as written, to the point of absurdity. Mailboxes painted the approved bays, lawns trimmed to the millimeter, trash bins placed at perfect 45-degree angles. Every inspection passed flawlessly. Every fine rejected legally. They couldn't touch us, not without exposing their own lies. Step 2. Information storm. We flooded social media, posted every shady document, every email, every photo of the fake caretaker program. We tagged the county. We tagged the attorney general. We tagged everyone with a blue check. By the end of the week, Lakeside HOA scam was trending across the state. Step 3. The trap. I knew they'd try to retaliate, so we baited them. Dale filed a maintenance violation on himself, a fake one, to see who responded. 2 days later, a man in a black suit showed up, claimed to be from HOA enforcement. We recorded everything. Turned out, he worked for the same law firm. We handed the footage straight to the reporter. And just like that, the mask finally cracked. The county launched a full investigation, raided the HOA office, confiscated files, drives, contracts. Guess what they found? Multiple shell companies, offshore payments, hundreds of caretaker leases tied to Lander's signature, and one fat account labeled LHF Holdings. It all connected back to that same lawyer. A week later, the news headline hit: Lakeside HOA president and legal partners charged with real estate fraud. I read it twice, then laughed out loud. Mrs. Lander's photo on the screen, her plastic smile replaced by a mugshot. Mark high-fived me so hard my hand stung. Dale cracked open a beer and said, to the first HOA they couldn't bully. They seized the fake accounts, dissolved the HOA charter, and declared all properties independent. We were finally free. No more fake rules. No more fines. No more notes on fences. Just peace. And silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel heavy anymore. The kind that means freedom. Weeks later, I stood on my porch. Sun setting over the lake. Wind soft, air clean. For the first time in forever, it actually felt like home again. Mark pulled up beside me. You ever think you went too far? I smirked. Nah, they went first. He laughed. Fair point. I looked across the water, the reflection of the trees dancing on the surface. Then I thought of all the other neighborhoods. All the other people still trapped under HOAs just like ours. If one small town could burn the system down, what would happen if everyone fought back? It's been 3 months since the arrests, and the lake finally feels quiet again. No meetings, no letters, no warnings taped to doors at midnight. Just peace. Real peace. Sometimes I still wake up expecting to see that clipboard on my porch, that same fake smile waiting for me outside. But there's nothing now. Only birds, and the sound of the water hitting the rocks. The county cleared my records. The deed's officially back in my name. Stamped, signed, sealed. You'd think I'd celebrate. Throw a party. Maybe finally relax. But the truth is, something in me changed. When you fight people who hide behind rules, you start seeing how fragile the system really is. One line of text, one fake document, and boom, your whole life disappears. Sometimes Mark still visits. We sit on the porch, share a beer, talk about how crazy it all was. He says, "Bro, you went viral. You're a legend online." I laugh. "Yeah, the guy who fought the HOA. Great legacy." He grins. "Could have been wise. Could have lost everything." I nod. Could have, but it's not about me anymore. Because every day, I still get messages, emails, comments, people from all over the country, telling me their stories, their own HOA nightmares. Some lost homes, some lost savings, some just lost their peace. All of them say the same thing. I thought I was the only one. That's what keeps me up at night. Because for every HOA exposed, there's 10 more still hiding behind community improvement slogans. Last week, I got another letter. No logo this time. No return address. Just a plain envelope. Inside was a single line, typed clean in black ink. We see you're still talking. No signature. No threat. Just that. I stared at it for a long time. Then I smiled. Because that's how you know you hit a knave. They can send letters. They can threaten. But they can't silence truth. Not anymore. People aren't scared now. They're angry. They're waking up. They're realizing what I did. That HOAs aren't about harmony. They're about control dressed as order. And when you stop playing their game, their whole little kingdom collapses. Sometimes I walk down the trail behind the cabin, past the pine trees, down to the water. That's where it all started. That morning I came home and saw a stranger in my house. That moment when my life flipped. Now, it feels like it happened to someone else. Like I'm just the storyteller now, watching it play back in my head. The sun hits the lake just right these days. Warm, golden, peaceful. I still think about Mrs. Landis sometimes. Wonder if she ever understood what she became. Maybe she started with good intentions. Maybe she just wanted power in a small world. But power's a drug, and rules are the spoon it burns on. They say order keeps people safe. But maybe a little chaos is what keeps people free. I used to hate the fights, the letters, the petty drama. Now, I kinda miss it, because it taught me something I'll never forget. Home isn't about the walls, or the land, or the paperwork. Home is about who owns your peace, and I'll never let anyone take that again. I stood there at the water's edge, watched the ripples fade, and said softly, yes, we showed them what community really means. The wind felt warmer that day, like even the lake was proud. But sometimes, when the night gets quiet, I still see headlights pause near the gate, a shadow move past the trees, a feeling that someone's still watching. Maybe it's just paranoia, or maybe some people never really leave. So tell me, if you finally won against your HOA, if the nightmare was over, and then one night, you caught someone watching your house again, would you call the cops? Or would you grab a flashlight and face the next story yourself? If you've ever stood up to power and refused to back down, hit that subscribe button. And if you've got your own HOA story, share it in the comments below. Because the more we talk, the less they can hide.